Some folks seem pretty upset over this Connecticut Sun sale situation. I can't say I am one of those folks that is pissed off about it, but here is some of the reaction that you've seen. Senator Richard Blumenthal, WNBA put a full court press on blocking the Sun from staying in Connecticut. Deeply harmful to fans that live and breathe basketball. DOJ should investigate and stop such anti-competitive interference. Look, let's unpack this for a second, right? So the Connecticut Sun, we're going to be sold to one of the owners of the Celtics, right? Like, that was...
DeWanna Bonner didn't just hear the news. She felt it like a gut punch, a deep betrayal from a franchise she gave everything to. The Connecticut Sun was suddenly treated like a disposable asset, sold off with no regard for the players or the loyal fans who built its identity. What made it even worse was the league shutting down what many believed was the one real opportunity to elevate the team. This wasn't just about ownership changing hands. It felt like a direct rejection of the explosive momentum surrounding stars like Caitlin Clark, a moment where the sport should have been accelerating, not hitting the brakes. From Bonner's perspective, the WNBA front office had actively blocked a transformative deal that could have kept the team thriving in its region. What should have been a milestone was turned into a statement that cut deep. This wasn't business as usual. This felt personal. It felt like a message to players and fans alike that their investment, their passion, and their loyalty could be overlooked in an instant.
Let's unpack this for a second, right? So the Connecticut Sun, we're going to be sold to one of the owners of the Celtics, right? Like, that was agreed to. And that I get. Like, Boston, WNBA team, Boston sports fans, region remains the same, even if it's a different location. Like, I understand, I guess, being pissed that didn't go down. As far as the Connecticut Sun themselves, I don't think that team had much juice relative to the rest of the league. Let's just be real about it. It was not a destination.
A staggering $325 million offer was on the table, a game-changing opportunity that could have reshaped the future of the franchise. It came with a connection to ownership from the Boston Celtics, ready to inject major market energy, resources, and visibility into the team. For players like Bonner, this was a long overdue step into the spotlight the league keeps promising but rarely delivers. It represented everything the Connecticut Sun and its fan base had been waiting for, a real chance to compete not just on the court, but in the broader conversation around the sport. Yet instead of embracing that future, the WNBA responded with a firm and calculated rejection. The league argued the offer bypassed the traditional process, while overlooking a passionate regional fan base that was already in place, hungry for growth and a modernized experience that actually matches the elite talent on the court. What should have been a defining leap forward became another frustrating reminder of just how complicated and controversial the business of basketball can really be.
It was not a destination. It was not one of those teams, if you're another team, you get excited about playing, you're circling on the calendar. And the facilities were not up to par. They're sharing courts for kids' birthday parties and stuff like that. And in this new CBA, that's part of it, is making sure all the facilities are up to par. So just keeping it status quo, I get why that wasn't the case. Just even moving, somewhere in Connecticut, Hartford was another suggestion. But with the ownership change could have been the upgrades. So that's one argument.
Behind the scenes, the situation surrounding the Connecticut Sun has become increasingly difficult to ignore. The conditions feel far from what you'd expect at the professional level in today's game, especially as the rest of the WNBA continues to evolve and raise its standards. Players are still navigating shared spaces and limited resources that make it nearly impossible to sell a true vision of the future to incoming talent. For veterans like DeWanna Bonner, that contrast is deeply frustrating. The league is experiencing a surge in attention, driven in part by the massive spotlight around Caitlin Clark. Yet in Connecticut, players are left operating in an environment that feels outdated and restrictive, a growing disconnect between the level of talent on the court and the infrastructure meant to support it.
Putting in that bid. But you can see the other side of it as well if you're, I think, fairly looking at it. The WNBA's case would be that they tried to skip the line, more or less. That's essentially what they said. Sun ownership, however, initially reached a deal last summer to sell the team for a record $325 million, which, by the way, needs to be appreciated. I think that the price here is $300 million to go to Houston, to relaunch the Comets, which I haven't even mentioned up until this point. And there's some history there, of course. But just the fact that the Connecticut Sun are selling for upwards of...
Instead of leaning into opportunities like a potential expansion into a market tied to the Boston Celtics, the WNBA appears to be shifting its focus in a different direction entirely. Reports suggest the league is moving toward reviving the Houston Comets with a $300 million relaunch, a decision that to some feels less about following the current momentum of the game and more about aligning with established NBA ownership circles. The involvement of the Tillman Fertitta family has only added to that perception. And while Houston undeniably carries historic significance in women's basketball, the move raises tough questions for loyal supporters in Connecticut, for fans and players like DeWanna Bonner who are still invested in the Sun's future. It creates the impression that an existing market, one with dedicated fans and real momentum, is being overlooked in favor of relationships that fit more neatly into the league's existing power structure. IT leaves many wondering how decisions like this fit into what is supposed to be a bold, forward-looking era for the WNBA.
Which I haven't even mentioned up until this point. And there's some history there, of course. But just the fact that the Connecticut Sun are selling for upwards of $300 million is one of the surest signs of growth of the league that there's been, right? Like, I think they might have been bought for $10 million or something along those lines. That's an explosive growth. And it's one of the arguments I made going into the CBA as to how you can say, where the trajectory of the WNBA is headed beyond just simple revenue, net revenue, game in, game out.
The situation has escalated so far that even political leaders are now stepping in. What started as a basketball controversy has grown into something much bigger, reaching well beyond the court and into the halls of government. Senator Richard Blumenthal publicly pushed back against the potential unraveling of the Connecticut Sun, calling for aggressive action to protect the team's place in the state. He even floated the idea of involving the Department of Justice to examine whether the WNBA engaged in anti-competitive behavior. When a sitting U.S. senator is openly discussing legal pressure over a franchise decision, it signals just how deeply this issue has fractured trust. This is no longer simply a league matter. IT has transformed into a broader debate about control, fairness, and who really gets to shape the future of professional women's basketball. And the answers for many are becoming harder to accept.
Teams that have put bids in, that have gotten rewarded for doing so. WNBA effectively blocked the deal from progressing, holding firm that relocation decisions are made by the WNBA Board of Governors and not by individual teams, and that cities have already gone through the expansion process, which included Houston. Those cities have priority over Boston. And we know we're getting Cleveland. We know we're getting Philadelphia. Obviously, the tempo, Toronto and Portland are entering this year. And now you're going back to Houston. Now the cynic could say it's the Fertitta family, right? And the NBA rewarding one of its own because...
From the league's perspective, the WNBA maintains that its expansion process exists for a reason. Every potential market, including one tied to the Boston Celtics, must follow the same structured path already navigated by cities like Houston, Toronto, and Portland. But for players and those closely watching the situation, that explanation doesn't fully land. It feels less like a principled stance and more like a convenient shield against accelerating change, particularly at a moment when the sport is experiencing a genuine surge in visibility and momentum. In their eyes, it sends a frustrating message to the Connecticut Sun that immediate opportunity and growth can be sidelined if it doesn't align with a slower, more rigid long-term plan. And that leaves a deeper, uncomfortable question hanging over the roster as it stands today. Whether waiting your turn will ever truly pay off, or whether the window for this group will quietly close before the league is ready to act.
Priority over Boston. And we know we're getting Cleveland. We know we're getting Philadelphia. Obviously, the tempo, Toronto and Portland are entering this year. And now you're going back to Houston. Now the cynic could say it's the Fertitta family, right? And the NBA rewarding one of its own because of the Houston Rockets connection. The Sun will play one more season in Connecticut before relocating in 2027. So I sit on the side of, I understand why the Sun are being moved. I understand why this is happening.
To truly understand the frustration, you have to look at the numbers, and they are nothing short of staggering. The Connecticut Sun was originally purchased for what now feels like a bargain, around $10 million, only to see its value climb past $30 million. That surge wasn't driven by luck. It was built on years of commitment, sacrifice, and performance from players who carried the league through its quieter eras, showing up and competing at the highest level long before the cameras and the crowds followed. Now, just as the spotlight intensifies in what many are calling the era of Caitlin Clark, new revenue streams and massive attention are flowing into the WNBA. But instead of being celebrated, there is a growing sense among players that the very people who built this foundation are being sidelined from shaping its future. They are watching valuations skyrocket while being denied any real influence over ownership decisions. And that creates a tension that feels less about growth and more about control, about who ultimately gets to benefit from the league's long-awaited breakthrough moment.
Connecticut before relocating in 2027. So I sit on the side of, I understand why the Sun are being moved. I understand why this is happening. I like the idea personally of a team in Boston more than a team in Houston. But the moral of the story is the demand. And you had teams that have put in for these bids, like Houston, and they're getting rewarded, and other teams wanting to get in on the WNBA business. And ultimately, I think
this entire controversy is unfolding in the shadow of upcoming collective bargaining negotiations, raising the stakes far beyond a simple franchise sale. Players across the WNBA are pushing not just for a larger share of revenue, but for real influence over how their teams are run. When the league blocks a high-profile ownership path tied to the Boston Celtics, it sends a clear message. Player preference comes second to the authority of the Board of Governors. Veterans like DeWanna Bonner recognize that as a dangerous precedent, one that could reshape free agency and player autonomy for years to come. If the league can dictate where a franchise goes, then the idea of player choice starts to feel more like an illusion than a reality. Critics have already begun questioning the relevance of the Connecticut Sun, fueling even more frustration for the competitors who spent years building the team into a consistent contender, only to see it treated as expendable despite proven success and genuine investor interest. With a looming 2027 relocation tied to the revival of the Houston Comets, a lame duck atmosphere has settled over the franchise, where every game is now overshadowed by uncertainty, draining the culture and loyalty that once defined the team. Accusations of anti-competitive interference continue to swirl, particularly around the involvement of figures like Tillman Fertitta. Those accusations have highlighted deeper concerns about the league's ties to NBA power structures and whether decisions are being made for the sake of growth or simply for internal alignment. At the center of it all is the undeniable impact of Caitlin Clark. Her arrival has transformed the league's economics, driving ratings, ticket sales, and franchise valuations to historic highs. Yet, instead of lifting all teams equally, that momentum is exposing fractures. The league's push to prioritize expansion into new markets over strengthening existing ones has placed teams like the Sun and their loyal fan base in a difficult position, where past contributions are being overshadowed by future projections. The harsh irony is impossible to miss. A franchise valued at record levels is simultaneously being told its current home isn't good enough, leaving players feeling less like stakeholders in the sport's future and more like assets in a larger corporate strategy. As the expansion queue grows with cities like Toronto and Portland and others like Cleveland and Philadelphia wait in line, the question becomes impossible to ignore. Why prioritize potential over proven success? Why trade a dedicated market for an uncertain one? And why enforce standards like upgraded facilities only to use them as justification for relocation rather than investment? Players see that contradiction clearly, and they are navigating it while still competing at the highest level, turning every game into something greater than basketball, a statement of resilience in the face of a system that feels increasingly out of their control. Ultimately, this isn't just about the sale of the Connecticut Sun. It is about a league at a crossroads, trying to balance explosive, player-driven growth with centralized control. The frustration felt by Bonner and others reflects a deeper disconnect between those who power the game and those who govern it. As 2027 approaches, the WNBA faces a defining question. Can it build its future without undermining the very foundation that got it here?